If you haven't been living under a rock for the past week or so, you probably heard of the Restore Religious Freedom Act in Indiana. Now, what this is and what it does, it's an act that allows business owners in Indiana to reject customers based upon their religious views. So, if you're a Christian, some sort of conservative Christian that does not agree with homosexuality based upon your flawed religious views and your misunderstanding of how science actually works, then you are granted now the privilege to let gay people be turned away from your shop, not to serve gay people. Obviously, now under the law, everyone has to serve everyone. They can't, they can't say you're not allowed to come in to my store because you're black or because you're a man or because you're a woman or because you have gray hair or brown hair or whatever it may be. You're not allowed to discriminate in any way. But before this was only before the Restored Religious Freedom Act was passed in Indiana. Now it seems as though because of religious freedoms, you're allowed to discriminate based upon your religious identity, your religion. Now, of course, most of this is really going to go towards homosexuals. Some of it might go towards black people, but probably not, seeing as though this Religious Freedom Act is a right to discriminate based upon your religious views. And from what I know, Christians don't have anything wrong with black people. They just have something wrong with gay people, homosexual people. Most conservative Christians hold this view. Now, on the left, as I would have been on the left a couple of years ago, I probably would have been agreeing that this was an abhorrent law that was passed in Indiana. Automatically, the left goes down to, well, this is a racist, homophobic, prejudiced act that was passed in the first place. Of course, business owners should have, of course, business owners should have to serve gay customers because they can't really do anything about being gay. It's not their fault. I would have agreed with this standpoint a couple of years ago. And I mean, obviously, I'm not against gay people. I'm not a homophobe or anything else like that. I could care less. But as a libertarian and as one who believes in natural law, who understands natural law now, unlike 3 years ago, I'm actually 100% for this act. But I don't think it went far enough. I think that this act hasn't gone far enough because it should extend to every single thing, even non-religious reasons why you might decline somebody coming into your store. Now, being against Christianity and its forms of prejudice when it comes to being prejudicial towards homosexual people, I also am glad that this act has passed because of the fact that if I am ever going to go to Indiana, which I haven't been there for all my life, if I was going to go to Indiana, I would have a sure ability to discern whether or not a store owner wants to accept homosexuals into their store, into their business. Now, beforehand, I wouldn't have had that sort of ability. I would have gone in not knowing whether or not this store owner, whether this business owner was a bigot or not, because he would be enforced by law to accept everyone into his stores, gay, straight people and homosexuals alike. But now that this Religious Freedom Act has passed, I have the ability to figure out who is someone who is fine with homosexual people and doesn't give a shit, like me, or cares more about money than homosexuals, so won't discriminate, or people who are just bigoted assholes. And it's a great thing for me because I don't want to give bigoted assholes my money. I think that sort of behavior should be rallied against. Now, of course, I don't think that person should have the gun to the state pointed against their head to tell them that they should have gay people into their store. I want to deride my power, my little bit of power in the marketplace to decide whether or not I'm going to support this person's bigoted views. Now, I think a lot of people are up in uproar on the left because they simply do not understand that the power that they have in the marketplace is much greater than it is through the government. Through the government, you can say you're supposed to allow everyone into your store no matter what, and that person will allow everyone into their store no matter what, and treat the homosexual person in their store a little bit badly, but still get the money and service from a homosexual because homosexuals are allowed to go in their store. That's literally like the government coming in and saying, don't shoot yourself in the foot or we'll shoot you in the head. If the person allows homosexuals into their store because they're required by law, that means that they will get the money even from homosexual people and even from homosexual allies like me. And allies of homosexual people like me. But because this law was passed, this will no longer be relevant. Because the people who really do care about turning down homosexual people will have homophobic people, will have people who don't care about homophobic rights or whatever, homosexual civil rights, quote-unquote, go to their store, they will get their cash, while people like me who care that if you're an ignorant bigot or not will not give you money, which means your revenue will go down drastically as a homophobic business owner. This actually does more for the liberal cause than it does having the government intervene. Now, of course, I said before that I think that this should extend to all areas, not just religious. Now, the reason why it should extend to all areas, not just religious, is because this is not a matter of religious freedom, because there is no such thing as religious freedom. The only type of freedoms that you have is the freedom to not be aggressed against, and the freedom to aggress someone, go after someone who goes after you first, who aggresses upon you. This is the non-aggression axiom coupled with the self-defense principle. Now, this goes into property and self. Ownership of self, ownership of property. So you have your ownership of property, which you're allowed to do whatever you want with your own property. If you want to set your rules in your property so people who are of a Mexican descent cannot come into your store, then you're allowed to do that. If you want to set rules where people who are homosexual cannot come into your store, you can do that. If you want to set rules in your property where you're not allowed to bring guns into the store, you're allowed to do that. You know, everyone says, well, we need some sort of government, right? But the thing is that all the government is a centralized property agency. One that sets rules for everyone, even for people who disagree with that rule. When you have the free market, when you have a real true free market, not crony capitalism with a centralized bank and one currency that you're allowed to use, then you have a whole lot more choice of governments that you can enter into based upon voluntary interactions, based upon contractual agreements. So if I'm going to go into a store which has certain rules in it, designated by the owner of the store, then I'm entering a contractual agreement that I will abide by his or her own rules, meaning that I'm literally just going into another government. I'm going into another government, a decentralized government. I don't have to enter into this governing body. It's up to me. I'm not forced to. I'm not coerced to. I don't have to pay any taxes to the store. I just go in, abide by that person's rules, or else. Either I voluntarily go in, abide by that person's rules of their land, their place, or I have to get out. And that's what the free market is. That's what a voluntary society is. Voluntary society, anarchist society, is not necessarily an anarchist society where there are no rules, but an anarchist society is actually one that has many governments, that is voluntary, and that has contractual agreements that you voluntarily enter into based upon which business, which place, which land you're getting yourself into. And of course, the market also determines what people majorly want, which is an actual democracy. Because the more people want one certain thing, the less money it will become, and the easier it shall be to acquire that such thing, dependent upon the market forces via praxeology, as interpreted by Ludwig von Mises. So as I said before, I think that Indiana did a really good step towards freedom. I applaud them, but I think they should go one step further and put that law, the Religious Freedom Act, and set it off to everything, where it's not only just religious freedom, but freedom over your own property, no matter what. But as far, as what they did so far, I think they should go further, but so far, I give them a round of applause. Because your bigots, the bigoted people, the bigoted business owners, will get what they truly deserve. The money from other bigots and the lack of money from people who understand them for the morons that they really are.